So now that we've finally received guidance from USCIS about how this year's H-1B lottery will be conducted, we're here today to go over some frequently asked questions about the H-1B lottery, how the electronic registration process will work, and what to expect this year. My name's Kristina Hernandez. This is my colleague Stephen Brown. We're both associate attorneys here at Reddy Neumann PC, primarily working on H-1B petitions. So Stephen, what can employees start doing if they have a job offer from an employer who's willing to sponsor them for an H-1B visa this year?
Yeah, so absolutely, Kristina. So we know now that the registration period is going to be open from noon Eastern time on March 9th, and it'll close noon Eastern time March 25th. So if you have an employer that's wanting to sponsor you, that employer is going to have to submit your registration in the USCIS registration system. And then after that's done, after the 25th, they'll close it, they'll run the lottery, and then they'll get a selection. So that lottery will run based just off that registration.
So going more into the registration, what kind of information does the employer need from the employee to submit a registration on their behalf?
Yeah, the registration system is super simple. It's no longer the entire petition that you have to submit in the lottery at this time. These registrations only require the company submit the full legal name of their employee, the gender, their date of birth, their country of birth, their country of citizenship, their passport number, and whether they're going to be applying in the master's or bachelor's lottery.
So speaking of the bachelor's cap and the master's cap, how does someone qualify for the master's cap over the bachelor's cap?
Yeah, it's going to be required that the employee has a U.S. master's degree from an accredited U.S. institution.
And to add to that, that accredited U.S. institution does have to be a public or a nonprofit institution.
That's correct.
And Stephen, what about job duties or LCA details? We get a lot of questions about that. Is that type of information, is it required at the time of the electronic registration process?
No. Again, registration is just that basic information about that employee, that identifying information. They do not need to have the LCA or the job duties at this time.
And what about a client letter? Does that have to be submitted at the time of registration?
Nope. Again, just that basic information. So no client letters, no contracts, no work orders. None of that needs to be submitted at this time with the registration.
And what about, do the employees have to pay a fee to register themselves?
No, in fact, they actually can't by regulation. The employer, it's a $10 fee paid for each registration they do. So if they have 10 employees, they'll pay $100. But that has to be paid by the employer and cannot be paid by the employee.
And let's talk a little bit about, you said that the initial registration period is going to open March 9th and it'll close March 25th. So what's going to happen after March 25th?
Yeah, so that lottery will close. Everybody will be, the system will shut where you cannot add anymore. And then USCIS is going to conduct that lottery. And then sometime between the 25th and April 1st, we'll start getting selection notices. Those selection notices will detail where they have to file the petition and when they have to file the petition. I think last year was a 90-day window to file the petition, but it'll be detailed on that registration notice.
On the selection notice, yes, that's correct. Now, what about employees? Do they get their own notice from USCIS, or does the notice go only to the employers?
No, it only goes to the employer and to the attorney, if they have one, through the My USCIS website.
Now, here's an interesting question that we hear a lot. If an individual gets selected from one company, can they use that selection notice and then use it to file an H-1B petition with another company?
No, unfortunately, it's only good for that company that did the registration for that employee. So the opposite's also true. The employer can't turn around and say, I don't want to hire person A, now I want to use this registration for B and file something for a different employee. So it's only good for that employer and that employee.
Got it. And here's another good question that we have here. Now, can an individual create their own USCIS account and submit a registration on behalf of the employer and then ask the employer to file the H-1B petition?
No, it has to be done through the employer, a signatory or an authorized representative of the employer or their attorney.
And finally, to wrap this up, if an employee is not selected by March 31st, is there any hope of them to enter the H-1B lottery this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of hope, right? So USCIS doesn't close out these registrations until the beginning of the fiscal year, which will be October 1st, 2021. Last year, there was actually a second lottery done in August. Now, that's not a guarantee. That's not a mandatory thing. It was, last year, USCIS didn't receive enough petitions to reach the cap, and so they ran a second lottery. Again, not mandatory, not required, but there's still that hope.
It's a possibility.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Feel free to reach out to any of our firm's attorneys. Again, we are Reddy Neumann PC in Houston, Texas, and you can reach us at rnlawgroup.com.
Thank you.